Welcome everyone to the Outdoor Retailer Stand-Up Paddleboard panel discussion here at the camp stage. Our topic this afternoon, very generally, let's say, is a stand up and be heard. And this is where our expert panel, that's you guys, addresses your most pressing and issues and concerns. So this was set up to be entirely audience driven and with questions and comments. And if it takes a little bit, I have some leading questions here for you. But let's introduce our panel. Andre Niemeyer is the owner of I9 Media and SupConnect, as well as the founding president and current board member of SupIA. Did I get all that? He also has the longest title of anybody here on the panel. Hastings Bloomer is the director of product management for SUP and Surf at Confluence. So board works as well, whatever, just leave it at that. Confluence it is. Charlie Burwell is the general manager at Nash. Ryan Gay is the VP of sales at Surf Tech and NSP. And, Lily, here's Lily at MTI, co-owner of MTI. Great. So I'll just throw this out here before I get rolling with my questions for the panel. Does anybody have any dying questions here for issues, concerns, or anything like that to start off? You guys want to throw at these guys? All right, come on. I even baited an audience member. Okay, I'll get the conversation going for you. Okay, great.
You start.
I'll start. That's great. I just wanted to make sure I was going with the thing. So I have a bunch of general questions that here, very super general, like stuff like where will we be in 10 years? All right, there's a good one. And what current trends do you think that are current that we want to continue, and maybe what is out there now that is a trend that we want to kill and we'd like just to go away in SUP? So where will we be in 10 years? What are we doing now that we think is good and should continue, or what are we doing now that we should probably stop doing and try something else?
Andre.
Where we're going to be 10 years from now, well, I think a lot of the sub brands are going to be out of business. And I think that's, if you just look at the natural trajectory of any new market, whether it's personal computers in the early 1980s, or even windsurf, kiteboard, just take any market. Typically, in the early adoption phase, you have such strong growth that in the personal computing market, you had 1,500 personal computer brands, and today we can maybe think of 5. So I think 10 years from now, you're going to see a lot of that trajectory where a lot of brands are going to be out of business. So that's the answer to the first question. So what should we continue to do that we are doing that we should continue to do? I think we have to build margins into products. There is a serious race to the bottom in our space right now. And when you build all the different layers of the business, from product development to marketing to customer service to warranty, account receivables, some of the prices that are out there are just not sustainable. So the factories are likely going to go out of business. Some of the brands are going to go out of business. We need to stop that. That's just not healthy because we need to be educating the consumers. We need to be on all those different touch points to have a very healthy ecosystem in the space. So that follows right into the third question is what should we stop doing that we're doing now? And I think that's this race to the bottom. I mean, it's inevitable in a way. A lot of people are just going to do it. But as far as being a healthy play for the market, it's not. But it's a reality right now. And a lot of brands, and the good news is that a lot of even the big retailers that started with that concept of go low price point because you have an uneducated consumer base. So if you ask for a high price, they won't buy into it, so lower your price. A lot of those retailers that had that thinking are now raising their price point to accommodate for a sustainable business model. So that's a good sign, I think. I'm sorry.
I don't know if we're going this way or not.
No, you know what? Let's not go anyway.
Okay.
We have mics to share around here, so just go. I can watch who's going for the mic next, so that's okay.
I think kind of to pick up on what he was saying, the number of brands that are in the market and the undifferentiated product lines that came out early have resulted in this scenario where we have a lot of really similar products in the market that, with the exception of brand and graphics and color, really aren't very different. So you see how to differentiate an undifferentiated product, discount. And discount back and forth until we get to this point where we're really racing to the bottom. And I think that that's going to really push the brands that don't have a really strong financial foundation to a point where they're going to be compromising their ability to stay alive in this landscape. So that's really where the brands that have built a strong brand reputation and have a product line with a story that consumers can bite into are going to have an advantage.
I think for me, the big question in this show has been, what's going on? How are your retailers doing? Who's doing well? Who's doing bad? And you know, we have a little bit of everything. The retailers on a positive note and the brands that I see that are doing very well right now are the ones that are creating a community, whether it's around their retail shop and teaching people how to paddle, you know, having paddle evenings, paddle clubs, you know, really educating people how to become lifelong paddlers. And that's the same also with the brands. I think the brands that have, you know, an authentic position behind the brand, they're active paddlers, they're active participants. I mean, all of those brands are challenging each other and innovating. And I think that's what, you know, when we look around at all the brands around us and in some of the other spaces, you know, we have to look at, you know, how they were authentic and how they continue to grow. And SUP is the only category in this building, well, for the most part, that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so, you know, we have to look at, you know, the people that did it before us and how they did it in a healthy, authentic way that, you know, can be sustainable. And I think the most important thing is that our, you know, on the retail level, that there is an education aspect of it, getting people to paddle correctly, getting on the right product. You know, the cheap product out there, hopefully that brings some new people into the sport and they continue to paddle, but the negative of that is if they buy the wrong product because it's sold from, you know, inexperienced staff or even a brand that doesn't know what they're doing, then the consumer, that paddler, is discouraged and they just get out of the sport and they're gone. And so that's, you know, what I think.
You want to go next? Should we mix this up rather than just go down the line?
I think your first question was, where do I see this in 10 years? Well, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I see myself being right here? No way. I couldn't have guessed this. So I own a life jacket company with my husband, and I would have never guessed that I'd be here. So I can't answer the 10-year question. I think the first thing I think is skiing Whistler, paddling somewhere awesome. Business-wise, I tend to look 3 years ahead. For me, that's a more realistic place to look. In terms of product development, it's a 3-year window. In terms of looking where consumers are at, really looking, you know, who's buying product, what do they want, trying to listen to what consumers are interested in. And I think, I mean, I'm coming at this from an accessory point of view, from a life jacket point of view. One of the things I'd really like to see happen more is to see the emphasis on safety. This has been a really pretty tough summer for stand-up paddle drownings, and no one wants, I mean, there's billions of user hours on the water. I think as an industry, canoe, kayak, SUP, we actually do a pretty good job, but SUP, we seem to have a trend last year and this year. I think it might be that, you know, race to the bottom, a lot of people are buying boards and they don't understand that they really need to have a life jacket, preferably on their body or on board. They don't understand that legally if they're outside of the surf zone, they should have a life jacket. And we're kind of seeing the results of some really sad fatalities. Just last weekend, I think there were 4 across the country. And that's 4 more than any of us wants to see. So I would like to see more life jackets shown in media, in advertising, in marketing. And I think every life jacket company would be willing to work with board companies to provide products so it can be in your photo shoots.
Well, I guess, so maybe a question, if we want to take that back across here. So how do you guys feel what's the responsibility of us brands, retailers, and media to promote the use of PFDs? Let's just say where it's legal to wear them.
Well, I mean, I think it's the responsibility of all of us to hold ourselves and each other accountable for it. I mean, there's certain aspects of marketing where for a higher performance, maybe surf-oriented brand like us, some of the media we're going to put out and some of the marketing we're going to do, that safety aspect isn't relevant or applicable to that campaign. However, that doesn't mean that that's not important and we shouldn't care about it. And it should, that needs to become part of, at the retail level, you need to leave the store with the right board so you have the right experience, but you need the correct gear as well. You need a leash, you need a PFD, and you need to be shown how to properly use them. And that's, again, part of trying to control the experience and not just bang units out on price, because you want to retain your consumers. And this is a category that you can do that, but if the initial experience isn't positive, you don't get a second try.
So yeah, I have a thing to say on this. The relationship between PFDs and SUP has been highly controversial.
Yeah.
And I think SUP suffers heavily from its heritage. It comes strong largely from surfing, and you don't see a surfer wearing a life jacket. The problem that we have though now is that SUP is far bigger than surfing as far as the type of participants that are involved, and yet culturally it's still heavily a surf culture. So I look at it in two ways. Okay, so that's the reality of SUP, that the culture is this way. But then you have participants who have nothing to do with surfing whatsoever. I mean, you're in Minnesota, you're going to Florida, I want to do that, and I have no idea. So you have a lot of people in the SUP industry anti-life jackets. And yet, just take a trip down to the Florida coast and look who's paddleboarding, and immediately, I mean, and this is my personal view, I'm not speaking on behalf of SUP-IA, but if you ask, like the American Canoeing Association, what they've had to deal with, how they've had to work with litigators and lawmakers, and I do think that SUP has to overcome its own heritage and be much more life jacket friendly, if not even a proponent of life jacket, but not life jacket alone. That's a big difference too. If you come from kayak, you say just wear a life jacket. Well, if you wear a life jacket, you fall off your board, the wind blows, you can't swim. When you're inside a kayak, it's very different. And you can't put a leash to tie yourself to the kayak, but you can do with a SUP. So we do have to look at it differently. We have to be, I think, more open-minded as an industry, because we are 2%ers. And look at the end consumer. And yes, it's been incredibly safe, proportionally speaking, when you look at the number of participants and incidents. But we have to overcome our own heritage, look at it objectively, take lessons from ACA, and be more open to advocating life jackets in combination with a leash for the appropriate condition, with the appropriate life jacket, the appropriate leash, and the exceptions that apply, maybe swimming areas, surfing zones, and whatnot.
There was on the demo, so I was part of an industry meeting, or a Coast Guard and a bunch of kayak industry people met for breakfast on 7 o'clock on one day of the show here. And there was a fellow there from the Utah Safe Boating, or maybe he was even from the sheriff's office, I'm not sure, but he kind of made fun of us a little bit that Yeti was firing beers out into the water, and most of the people on stand-up paddleboards weren't wearing life jackets. And he was like, essentially he could have ticketed all of us in that zone. So he kind of turned it around. We were all talking very safety conscious and how we're going to do this. And he said, well, look at your event, your own event. And so
That would have been a headline.
it would have been a headline.
Well, so
Everyone at the demo arrested.
So yeah, part of the drive behind the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association was exactly to be proactive, right? Because if legislators are looking at it and they don't understand the sport and its nuances, the first thing you're going to do is life jackets works, life jackets on everyone. But then the first stand-up paddler is going to say, well, but then you can't swim to your port. So it's very important for the industry to be engaged, the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association, the brands, media, retailer, and everyone, to be able to be proactive in events like that, to work with codes of responsibility, best practices, distribute them, so that lawmakers and law enforcement can look at it and say, oh, they are being as responsible as an industry can be. And hopefully we can lead the way and make things safer for everyone.
Questions from the crowd at this point? Anybody want to jump in? No, hang on. I think there's a mic. I think you can right there. Everybody point. There we go.
Hey guys, what can you tell us about the outcome of that meeting you had the other morning? You know, what's the step that you're going to take moving forward?
Well, so
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's the step that you guys are going to take forward in result of that meeting that you had the other morning with all the different stakes at hand?
So I'll try and sum up a
Sure,
year.
yeah.
I'll do what I know. So I sat a year ago. A committee of paddle sports manufacturers, a bunch of different agencies, the ACA, and came together. And since then, they've made a series of safe boating videos, 8 of them that are being circulated that started to roll out in June. There's a brochure that it looks like a CD case in the liner notes, essentially, that's going to be bound into, I think it's 7.1 million. They're printing, this is the print run that they're going to do, and a bunch of manufacturers have agreed to do that. Most of these are kayak manufacturers at this point, so I think a similar type meeting is going to happen at Surf Expo.
Yes.
So I think that's going to happen, and it's not as easy in the SUP world because you guys don't sell in kayaks. There's a bag of owner's manuals and things that a manufacturer can very easily insert a brochure into. It's different in the board world. Like, I think I don't know what will come out of that, but so I can only tell you what has happened at this point, and I think the idea is to try and work with the SUP. Are you guys familiar? Do you know this is going to happen? I'm just kind of looking across the panel. Okay.
I think it's pretty new, and I think it won't cost board companies anything to get the literature.
Yeah,
it's underwritten by a grant, a Coast Guard.
Yeah, this is a Coast Guard grant funding that's coming down, and then they're trying to say, hey, how do we do this and roll this out across the industry? And it's voluntary buy-in at this point by the different brands, mostly kayak brands at this. So that's. Are you asking me? Will SUP be the next step? I think that's the idea, is that SUP will be the next step in this. So, but to be fair, Canoe and Kayak isn't truly done. It's started, and I think they're trying to start that process with SUP at Surf Expo.
So it's a safety campaign not only for stand-up paddle. It is for canoe and kayak. And canoe and kayak is a little bit further on, and SUP is next. And
So this is coming from the Coast Guard numbers where boating deaths are going down, paddle deaths are going up proportionally. So that's why they're starting to look at this. The numbers are still very small, but they're trending upward, which is why they've begun that process.
Well, as far as the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association, so you're right. So at the Coast Guard, there is that process in place. And then there are also initiatives at local, state and local levels. On the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association, we have 5 initiatives that we've been working on. Warning label for manufacturers so that the consumer can be informed. We also have all kinds of waivers, a waiver package that we're putting together for shop operators, instructors, etc. We're also working on a best practices guide for the entire industry. We're also working on a code of responsibility. If you are a snowboarder or a skier and you're up on the lift or you're renting gear, you always see the code of responsibility. We also want to be proactive on that front. And then also we want to have an official statement from the Stand-Up Paddle Industry Association to help guide the way and inform a lot of these legislative decisions as well. So these are some of the things that we're working on that have come out of several meetings and also meetings at this show.
I sent out a kind of email to a bunch of retailers coming down here, and one of the questions it was a retailer in the Northeast, and he said his sales are strong now, and he's in the summer cottage industry market. He said his sales are strong now, and he worries about this industry when every boathouse and every cottage and every garage has a boat hanging in it, and wanted me to put forward the question of what are we doing now to try and create that second purchase or I think we kind of touched on it a bit, but how are we going to try and create enthusiasts, not just owners?
Well, I think that's kind of a funny question because, everybody asks that too. They're like, oh, is it plateaued? Is it going down? Has it hit its peak? Well, there's still a lot of plastic kayaks being sold. I mean, the kayak industry is still selling boats, and they've been around for a long time, and those boats never really go away. They don't wear out, and every event that I go to where there's kayak sales, there's new people getting into kayaking, and there's still people going, ooh, stand-up paddling is too scary for me. So I think there's so much potential growth for the future. I mean, it's so accessible, and the barrier to entry is really low that I think we're only going to see continued growth for a long time. But it all comes down to what we were talking about earlier: education and getting people on the right product and the right experience, and wanting to move up and not only own one board but the next board and the next board. And one of the problems that I see is just I'd call it the carnival riders. There are rental docs that just come to us and they go, what's your cheapest board? How durable is it and how long does it last? And what they usually end up with is a 75-pound plastic boat, which we call a stand-up kayak. And they just push people off. They take their $10, whatever. Those people rode the carnival and they go home and they never do it again. And whereas if you provide a better experience and on the right gear, I think you might be able to get people involved in the sport for longer.
And I think as we create enthusiasts and more than just product owners, they begin to value the performance characteristics that weren't available and haven't been available. We see inflatables growing and stiffness being that next big golden egg. And there's some great things here that have been advancements in technology that create a better experience. As people get more time on the water with a board, they begin to value the design characteristics and construction. And as long as we continue to develop and innovate, there are going to be options to sell. There are going to be better boards to paddle.
And I think you're right about the experience. One thing that I see retailers do, which I think is really awesome, is creating pathways of engagement with the person who just bought a boat. So you create a paddle and barbecue event evening, or you create a citizens race, not just an elite race for the world-class paddlers with millions of dollars being awarded, but a citizens race where they're winning a six-pack of the local brewery brew, or just something that's fun. So we talk about our paddle sports community and extending that community and relationships to our customers. So, what's really great about specialty retailer and what you're going to get over an online experience is that ability to connect and make friends with people who buy from you. Yeah, they're customers, but they can also be your friends, and that's why I'm still sitting here after 10 years.
You guys have some questions about, say, whitewater SUP back there? No doubt. Not yet. So what do you guys think about? Oh, sorry. Somebody coming up to the mic. Sorry.
I just wanted to address that retailer that had that question for how to continue the sales. And I think that people think sometimes that kayaks are over here, SUPs are over here, and they never come together. And especially within families and mixed friends, there's no reason that, they can't kayak together and SUP together and canoe together. And you can engage all of those craft with a variety of people in a variety of situations. And I think there's room to grow that area, or that at least that mindset. Does that make sense?
It does.
So if you're doing a demo, do you suggest mixing the craft up more, like on the beach?
Not
so there's
even
more
necessarily a
integration,
demo,
or?
but to offer the suggestion that, okay, a kayak is great support for a stand-up paddle tour. You have one family member that wants to stand-up paddle. You have another family member that only wants to kayak. Sure, what's the problem? So I think there's opportunity there. Not a question, just a comment.
What do you guys think about in So another question that was put forward to me, and I'm just paraphrasing the question here, but they said in canoeing and kayaking and whitewater, there's an adventure element more so than SUP. And I know people are starting to go off now and do expeditions. Do you think there's a future for that to try and capture a little bit of that? I don't know, just throw that out there. I mean, right now, anyway. I won't try and put my personal bias into
I think it has to do with the age of the sport. It's so new, people are still trying to figure out what to do with it, right? So whereas like canoe and kayak has been around for a while, so okay, we've done all these things, now what do we do next? And you're starting to see more and more adventures and journeys taking place, and they really capture the imagination. But if you think of the consumer journey, like the consumer gets introduced to the sport, and you educate and you assist the consumer along the way, you convert it into a customer participant. We're still in that introductory phase as far as SUP goes. After you get a product, now you want to get deeper. Okay, and then you start thinking, I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to take my friends. I'm going to look at destinations. I'll figure out how to put all these traveling equipment on my board. So I think it has to do with the nature of how young the sport is. But just to put it in context, stand-up paddle racing, which accounts only for about 5% of the sport, only took place maybe like in 2006, 2007. So you're talking about like racing is only about 10 years old. Then you take the fitness aspect of that came even later. Then you take the river, that came even later. Now you have fishing, that's even younger than that. So it's as if babies are still being formed within the SUP space, SUP family, and travel is a bit down the line. You know, you don't want to give the driver's license to your toddler. Wait until they become teenagers, and I think that's where we are as far as SUP goes.
I think it's the natural evolution away from the surf culture that Andre mentioned earlier. When kayaking started initially in the 80s, whitewater was its strongest category, or at least it was a much larger proportion of the overall market. And now we see 20 years later that whitewater is a minority. I think the same sort of evolution occurs, and that's the type of expansion that we would expect to see away from surf, away from all around. There'll always be surf, especially a part of it, but onto the experiences that you can achieve in any environment on any craft. And SUP is no different.
I guess the difference in my mind was the canoeing began with the element of adventure, and we're now actually trying to figure out how to fit canoeing we're trying to fit canoeing and kayaking to some extent into something they can do between work and dinner, and that's what SUP has done first very, very well. It's a grab and go. It's a very easily accessible sport time-wise with busy schedules. So we're trying to fit those other paddle sports into it, and I was wondering if you thought there was a future here, a way to take that and actually, in some ways, make it more complicated, but add the adventure element to it and put what we have in the other sports into stand-up paddling.
I mean, yeah, that's already happening. I mean, we have great examples right here. I mean, we have Gabe sitting out here who's, horsebacked into the middle fork of the salmon and floated down the river, packing in his inflatable boards. Brittany and Natalie going on rivers all over the place. Sorry. That is naturally happening, and it's only going to continue. And that's to me, sorry racers, but way more exciting than just saying go and who's next. And I think that relates into this industry far better than a lot of the other aspects of the sport.
We're ready. All right, let's hear it.
My name's Shane. I have a stand-up paddleboard company called Shibumi. I started paddleboarding about 8 years ago, and when I got into the sport, I bought 15 boards and tried to start a business, and ended up taking people for free for the first year or two, but build a tribe and a community. And I started manufacturing boards because I saw exactly that niche, that people were buying cheap boards, not having a great experience, and not sticking in the sport. And everything that I do is from the heart and for a passion to get people out on water. And I am so honored to be in this business, because the way that we're touching hearts and lives, getting people out, getting them active, has been it's been amazing to just watch it. To watch Nat and Britt and what they're doing and how they're touching hearts and lives. Watch Peter Hall and his products that he makes. Hala is an amazing company. But what's been fun in this process, and just as a conversation, is the innovation of the sport, is watching this sport evolve. And because I'm a small company, I've created this product called a V-Sup, which gives you independent suspension, and got a split sup, which is 2 individual hulls, and Nalumbo, and suspension that gives you side things. It's been fun to create as a small company, and it's been interesting to watch other companies evolve. But when you talk about whitewater, right, and the expansion of that, this particular board gives you, the V-Sub gives you a way different experience on whitewater, because it gives you independent suspension. But where do you know, when you talk about where's the sport going to be in 10 years, you know, what is really exciting, and I'm just sharing this because of the innovation that is going to be coming up the pipeline, and with that innovation, getting people out on water. And to me, it's an insanely exciting sport, and I just would love to know what you guys feel about innovation and where this sport's going to go, and how it's going to continue to evolve. And you know, a couple days ago, I took a 9-year-old and 11-year-old girl and her parents down a Class 2 river, you know, and with Nat and Britt, they're amazing with how they're teaching women and men how to whitewater sup all over the country. But where do you think the innovation of the sport is going to go, and the excitement and enthusiasm? Because, man, we're touching a lot of hearts and lives, and just waking people up, getting them into nature, making them want to take better care of the planet because they're out in nature. Okay.
Well, we're coming out with a flying sup next year.
I mean, I think as you look back on, you know, all of the emerging sports, the sport still is very young, and we're still in my personal opinion, at the point where innovation is coming still out of necessity. You know, it started with basically a longboard surfboard, and then people started doing that and realizing that they wanted to do other things, and then specific products were created to do those things better. And we're still, you know, 15-ish years, you know, commercially probably 10 years removed from that, but that still is a really, really short period of time. And I think the innovation is still going to continue to come from necessity. You know, the sport's going to continue to expand into other avenues that maybe aren't going to be completely mainstream, but are certainly going to be legitimate areas of it, and innovation for product change, maybe completely different products, is going to come to meet those, you know, to meet those needs.
I think a lot of it is finding ways to improve the experience that those carnival consumers have. Instead of a 60-pound board that they pay $10 to get on and ride, now it's a 30-pound board. And then beyond weight and materials, you know, we have to provide a solution to the rental operators in this case, and to retailers that provides the best possible experience for the most value. And there's a long way to go with material technologies, shapes. There's some cool things that have been happening, I've already mentioned, in the inflatable side, and you just see this evolution occurring away from this all-around, do-it-all okay hull design, essentially, to much more specialized but still versatile shapes. So I think we have a long way to go. There are a lot of opportunities to play with, including flight.
I think the spirit of that question, there was so much passion, and that's what we need to hold on to as an industry, because new product and innovation isn't just about looking at a computer screen and doing something that is digital. You need to have that passion. You need to be on the water. You need to be falling in the water and trying to float, and experience what your customers are experiencing. And experience, you know, if I'm seeing, am I putting myself into the shoes of my purchaser, the consumer? You know, what do I want to experience? What do I want to put on my kids? You know, I love it that there's boards for little kids coming out. How awesome is that? You know, we need to inspire the young kids. You know, put a Pokemon on the end of the board. I don't know, whatever. You know, we need to keep fueling outdoors. And that's why we're at Outdoor Retailer. There's a hard minute. Thank you for coming, everyone. We wouldn't be here if you didn't come.
Two of the things that people were spitballing around with me, and I thought I'd just throw it up here with you guys. Pack sup, like pack rafting. Super ultra lightweight for backcountry. Anything? Is that on the radar of anybody? And the other one was, I know there are big boards for, you know, group surfing. Or, I don't know what you guys would call it, but people were asking me about tandem, if that was anything you guys maybe this is too early to even ask you, but are either of those concepts on the radar?
Weight is always on the radar, whether it's an inflatable for packing in or any other board. That is always on the objective to get the same durability and stiffness and performance with a lighter, more convenient package. Whether or not inflatables, maybe we're working on something, maybe we're not.
Get to work.
Tandem, I guess maybe you could say, kind of exists.
But as a concept, is that something that's going to catch on where, like tandem canoes, for example, or tandem kayaks?
Have you ever tried to paddle tandems up?
So that's already happening. I
tried that.
So there's an interesting history here. So
That would be a no.
stand-up paddling started with tandem because those are the boards that people could actually stand on and paddle. The Bainey's down with Infinity, and you had a few different shapers down in Southern California. In fact, one of the exhibitors here, Surf Tech, had the Mickey Munoz tandem model, and it was used for stand-up paddling before even the first stand-up paddleboard company came around. I fast forward a few years, and something interesting happened, where the Bainey family put together the Quadnundrum, as they called it, which is a stand-up paddleboard with 4 people on it. And they started racing. The Hano Hano down in San Diego and whatnot. Also the Mongoose Cup in Dana Point. And it's a blast. I've done it. It's just phenomenal. It's a group paddle. The board is really long. It's like 19-foot board. But that's already happening. And yeah, the light pack, there's already demand for it because you already have the package, and people are trying to make it. First, they were just bags with stand-up paddle boards in them. Then they went, well, let's put some straps so they become backpacks. Well, but they're still heavy. Let's put some wheels. Well, but where does the paddle go? Well, let's make 3-piece paddles. So you're already seeing in terms of product development moving in that direction.
Do you think it'll continue that way? Like there's enough driving?
Yeah, especially if you go outside of the United States, you look at just the market breakdown. In the U.S., you still have about 70% non-inflatable, 30% inflatable, depending on the numbers you look. But you go to places like France, 70% of the market share is inflatables. So you have a massive market demand for better and better inflatables, better and better packaging, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. In Japan, you can't get to the beach with a regular surfboard, just there ain't space. So there is a market there that also, so yeah, I just see that moving more and more forward in terms of constructions and materials and so on.
I could add one thing to that is I train people on a river on a 14-foot paddleboard. So when I'm training someone to learn how to paddle on a river, they'll be on the front of the board with me, I'll be on the back. And Hala makes an awesome big board that's easily a tandem board as well. And so yeah, we're out there doing it. I have a 30-foot paddleboard that is called the Supple War, where 2 to 6 people on each side paddle against each other, and they try to move it back and forth. So yes, there's definitely tandem boards out there.
Steve, we were just on the wrong board. Or we suck. I think it was the wrong board.
All right, you guys have any more questions? That's great. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. So let's Andre Sapaye, Hastings from Confluence, Charlie from Nash, Lily here at MTI, Ryan from Surf Tech at NSP, and Ryan. Yeah, that's everybody. Oh wow, yesterday I had 6. Sorry guys, that's great. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for Outdoor Retailer for providing this stage here. And at Rapid Media where I work, we have a little slogan we use, paddle forever. And I just hope you guys all paddle forever. Thanks for coming. Thanks guys.